Welcome friends, it is I, Earl Scarf, and it's time for a new guide series called The Short Smite Guides for Beginners. First up is going to be Agni. Now what's happening here is going to be a lot of basic information for new players playing these gods. If you're advanced or expert, ain't going to be nothing for you. Nothing at all. Watch it anyway so that you can put some comments to help players out, but this is for the beginners. They're going to be around 5 or 6 minutes or less trying for that short time so that we can make them out hopefully weekly and so we can get them all out by the end of the year like every single god if we can. And we're going to go alphabetically. So Agni down to Zhang Kuei, unless another Z happens after Zhang Kuei, then it'll be that god. And we're going to be very general here, just give a lot of basic information, very useful information for beginners so that they do really well with the gods, and they'll find their way later on to do better in advanced and expert play on their own. One more thing to mention is that we're not going to include builds in this guide. The reason for that is builds get out of date very quickly, so we're not going to do that so we don't date the guide, so that this guide will be relevant even a year from now unless Agni gets remade. That is the idea there, and that should be all of it. So let's go ahead and get going. So Agni is a traditional mage. He's extremely bursty in a short amount of time, and he can cause just a lot of damage and death. He can kill pretty well. He can also set up for teammates with the stun that he has. Now, because he's a mage, he's traditionally played in the mid. He can be played in the solo, jungle not so great, ADC not so great, and as far as support goes, some have had some success with it because of his stun. Not the best, but it is doable. But definitely for a beginner, just play him in the mid lane, and solo if you have to, but definitely mid is where he plays very well. Agni's abilities. First up is his passive Combustion. After 4 successful basic attacks, your next Flame Wave or Rain of Fire, which is your 2 or your 4, will do a damage over time effect, which is basically a burn, and it's really nice for just doing more damage to an enemy for harassment or to maybe even kill them. His first ability is called Noxious Flames. This is a ranged AoE attack that puts a gas cloud out there, and it'll stay there for a while. Anything that stands in it will take damage. But if Agni hits it with his other abilities, his Flame Wave, Path of Flames, or even his ultimate Rain of Fire, it'll explode and stun any enemies affected by it. Very useful to set enemies up for yourself and teammates to kill, and just burst them to death. His next ability is Flame Wave. It's just this big burst of fire in front of him, does a lot of damage, very nice. His third ability is called Path of Flames. What happens is he dashes, and behind him he leaves a Path of Flames. So it stays for 3 seconds, and any enemy standing in it will get burned for a while they're standing in it. So you can put it in front of a minion line and burn them down. You can put it in front of enemy gods and burn them. Pretty nice there. And lastly, there's his ultimate, Rain of Fire. Now, this is an interesting ultimate in that it has charges. Every 20 seconds, you gain a charge at a maximum of 3 charges. When you have a charge, you can launch his ultimate, and it is a ranged AoE attack that does a bunch of damage. It takes a moment after firing to land, but it does really good damage. And you can fire them early with 1 or 2 charges, but when you have all 3 charges, you can just launch them in succession and do a whole bunch of damage. You just gotta make sure you're accurate with it. It's really good. And you can lessen the time between charges with cooldown. Tips and combos. First one is a clearing tip, and that is Flame Wave. That's your main damage dealer for clearing waves, and the best thing to do about it is just do 4 basic attacks to build up Combustion, then do the Flame Wave. You'll melt down the enemy minions, and that'll be really good for you. The other thing you can do, though, is you can build Combustion and hit an enemy god with an ultimate for harassment. You'll hurt them pretty good, and then they're going to maybe want to consider going back to base, or they're going to stick around and they're going to be a little beat up. And if you do that 1 or 2 times, they'll be maybe half-life or close to it, and later on you can consider hitting them with all of your bursts and killing them right on the spot. It is really nice to do. It is just something to consider. Now we gotta talk about combos. There are 5 potential combos with the Noxious Fumes. 3 of them can be done when you throw the fumes out first, and 2 can be done after. The first 3 are simple, and that is you put out the fume and you hit it with your Flame Wave, or you hit it with your dash, or you hit it with your ultimate. Simple as that. Now the other 2 are a little more complex, and that is after your dash, you can turn around and put the fumes on top of your flame path. And that can stun someone chasing. That's really nice there. The last one takes just really quick clicking. That is, you throw out your ultimate, and you can very quickly put out the Noxious Fumes right where you threw the ultimate at the same time. Just hit 4, throw it, and then hit 1 and hit it as fast as you can. You put the fumes on it, you hit your enemy god with some damage and stun them, and then you can just drop your other ultimates on them, or you can run over and hit them with the Flame Wave, whatever you want to do. But it's a really nice burst that is possible, and it just works out really well. And one last thing, very important for beginners. Use your Path of Flames defensively. Only use it for escapes. Do not use it aggressively. If you do this, you will die very little, and you're going to be very frustrating for your opponents to deal with. It's just very simple advice. Only use it defensively, and you'll do very well with Agni. Now, when it comes to stats for beginners, I'm going to tell you right now, just focus on all O and no D, get a bunch of power, get a lot of penetration, get lifesteal if you need it. As far as defensive goes, beads, ages, and combat blank. You have a dash already, those will get you out of even more sticky situations, but armor, really not so great on Agni in my opinion. Now, you also want to get items that have a lot of procs. That is just stuff that is affected by his abilities more often because he bursts so much and does so many abilities at once. You'll get those procs to full very quickly and you can take full advantage of them. In conclusion, that is the Agni short guide right there. He's a bursty mage that does a lot of damage, wrecks people very hard. Very important for beginners is just learning when and where to use your stun, And of course, just landing your shots. It's very hard to land them when you're first playing, but eventually you'll get better with it. And I just gotta reiterate, use that dash defensively. It will keep you alive. It definitely will. So there you go right there. A lot of good information for beginners. Good luck out there with Agni, and the next guide should be Amazon Kami's next in line in the alphabetical order. And that should be a lot of fun there. And of course, if you have any feedback on the guide, if you feel like I did not give enough information, keep in mind that this is a beginner guide. Not trying to overload them with too much advanced and expert information, just enough to help them do well from the start. But if you have some advice you want to give to Agni players, go ahead and put them in the comments. You can also put builds if you want. I did not mention builds, like I said, because they would become obsolete over time, and I'd like for this to be useful to people going forward even a year from now. So there you go. That right there is the guide. I had fun watching and listening, and that's what it's all about, isn't it? Having fun. Thanks for coming by, and see you next time.